I'll cut to the chase. You're going to lose money investing in comics unless you learn these 7 steps. Let's take a look at the typical beginner. They are not familiar with one or more of the following pitfalls. Where to buy a comic book at fair prices. Which comics are valuable. The difference between these first Spider-Man books. That condition affects price profoundly. Or how to find up-to-date pricing information. If you are in this boat, be careful. You are in what Kenny Loggins would call the danger zone. There's a huge chasm between where you are and where you need to be to buy safely. If you buy now, you are susceptible to a catastrophic mistake. Here are the 7 planks that conquer the chasm of buying regret. Number 1, identify reputable dealers. Heritage, Comic Connect, Comic Link, and My Comic Shop have all been around for decades. 90% of the comics that I bought have come from one of these 4 businesses. Number 2, know which books are valuable. If you listen to many social media influencers, you'll hear about which books are hot and the books you need to buy right now. It can be difficult to distinguish between good information and just plain noise. For me, I'm a fan of the tried and true. And I always go to this book, which is like the Bible in the hobby. It's the Overstreet Price Guide. It lists the most valuable comic book for every time period. Gold, silver, bronze, copper, and even modern. For example, here's the top Silver Age books right here. Top 25 bronze and top 25 copper. Something that's great about these lists is they don't rely on just one person. There's a whole group of Overstreet advisors, some of the most knowledgeable people in the entire hobby who help come up with these lists. A big warning though, as you might have surmised, the Overstreet Price Guide does have guides to prices. For example, Amazing Fantasy is listed right there. That said, do not, and I repeat, do not use those prices for the guides that you're going to use to buy. The reason being is that while they might be rough, they're not up to date. And there are other tools that will get you up to date pricing. And we'll talk about one a little later. Step number 3, only buy CGC Blue Label books. There's a lot to unpack here. Less valuable books are almost always sold raw. Bagged and boarded. Bagged, and then the board is underneath. More valuable books are often evaluated and slabbed by a third-party grader. Among the third-party graders, CGC is by far the largest and has the longest history. And here's an example of a CGC graded book. And this one is pretty well known. This is Journey to Mystery 83. It's the first appearance of 4. This book is about $7,000, and I'm not going to spend $7,000 on a book that hasn't been evaluated by a third-party grader. Another advantage of CGC is that they have listed all the books they've graded on their census. And you can see how many books they've evaluated at each grade. You may notice the color of this label is blue. CGC labels colors abound. Each color represents something different. Yellow is for signature, gold is for pedigrees, purple is for restoration, green is for qualified, and blue with gray represents conserved. Stay clear of everything but blue. The blue or universal label is given to collectibles that are simply the grade is marked with any special information such as an unverifiable signature noted on the label. Okay, before I get crucified in the comments section, hear me out. I do hope eventually that all collectors can branch out and buy raw comics. I hope they can branch out and buy books with different labels. I hope that they buy books from different third-party graders. I'm just saying, if you're starting out somewhere between beginner and intermediate, stick with the blue label. It's the easiest to understand and it's the easiest to get pricing information on. Step number 4, understand what grades represent. One of the most technical aspects of comic collecting is grading. It's a skill that takes considerable time to develop. Fortunately, CGC does this work for you. Their experienced graders provide a grade from 0.5, poor, which looks like a reg, all the way to Gem Mint, which is a 10 and a perfect comic. You don't have to know the ins and outs of comic book grading to be confident in buying a comic book, but you should have a general idea of what the grades represent. And as you do get more advanced, you'll start understanding the increments and how to grade more accurately. Nevertheless, that's the advantage of having CGC. They can tell you what the grade is, and they can also make sure that there's no restoration or something else funky going on with the comic. Let's move to step 5. And this one sounds really easy, but it's not. And it's buying the book that you intend to buy. Remember those 3 Spider-Man books? One of them is worth a lot of money, the other 2 a lot less. In fact, it is the book on the left, Amazing Spider-Man #1 from 1963, that is a legit key and costs thousands to $10,000s and even hundreds of thousands of dollars in high grade. The one in the middle looks really similar, but it's a reprint from 1966. And you can tell because the 12 cents isn't in the upper left-hand corner. And then finally, it's Spider-Man #1 from 1990. This is a series that started a lot later, and those books are worth a lot less. And by the way, none of these books features the first appearance of Spider-Man, which is Amazing Fantasy number 15. The point being is that there are a lot of similar books with similar names, but some of them are way more valuable than others. So you have to make sure that you understand which book you're buying. What complicates this even more is if you're into more modern books from the 90s, 2000s, and so forth, there tend to be several editions of books. Sometimes these are called variants. For example, if you were after the Spider-Man from 1990, there's a ton of different versions out there. There's a typical one, there's a silver, there's a gold, there's a platinum, and typically depending on the rarity of the variant, they can cost a whole lot more money. For example, the platinum edition, supposedly only 10,000 were published versus hundreds of thousands of some of the other types. CGC does a nice job of clearly identifying the series, the issue number, the publisher, publication date, and additional notes. So again, I'm going to show you my label for this book here, and you can see that it doesn't have a reprint under it. However, if I was looking at the Golden Record reprint of Journey into Mystery 83, I would see this. Step number 6, buy books with moderate to high CGC census counts. My buddy Greg Holland created this site, cgcdata.com, and this link will take you to the 2,500 comic books that have the most on CGC census. In other words, a lot of people think that these books are valuable, and there's enough data out there where it's fairly easy to price them. Books with moderate to high CGC census counts often sell frequently, thus making interpretation using GP analysis straightforward. What is GP analysis, you might ask? It's step number 7. Use GP analysis to buy books at fair market value. Imagine you were trying to buy a copy of Hulk 181, the first appearance of Wolverine, at a grade of 8.5. Here's how you do it. You go to GP analysis, you look up the title, you look up the issue number, boom, there you go, tons of data, and then we would take a look at that 8.5. As can be seen from this example, 13 copies have sold in the last 90 days at an average price of $5,758. The most recent sale was a bit lower at $5,101. Further, the multi-year graph shows steady growth from 2002 through 2020. The COVID-19 explosion in 2021, a decline, and perhaps a recent steadying out. At this moment, a $6,000 offer bid would be strong, a $5,000 offer or bid would be low. If you follow these 7 steps, you're likely to avoid catastrophe. Ooh, I almost forgot. There is an 8th step, and that is subscribe to this channel. I've got a lot of videos on tips of comic collecting, and if you want to learn more advanced tips, check out this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around real soon.